On the day my mom suffered a massive hemorrhage during a difficult labor with her second child, my biological father, a man worth 9 figures, pulled every doctor off her case to treat his mistress's migraine just because she complained. Her crying is giving me a headache. That night, my mom and my unborn baby brother both died. Then that same mistress set me up and had me thrown out of the family. Over the next 20 years, I survived on help from my mom's best friend and on my own reckless, desperate drive until I became the woman everyone now called Ms. Parker, the head of a multi-billion-dollar tech empire. At the company's annual intern conversion review, my assistant brought me 5 names. He pointed to the girl on the first page and could not stop praising her. Ms. Parker, this intern, Anna Bradford, has performed extremely well. Several supervisors gave her near-perfect evaluations. I opened Anna's profile, and my eyes stopped on the family information section. Those 2 names were burned so deeply into me that I'd know them in my bones, even after 20 years. After a long silence, I told my assistant to bring in all 5 interns. The full-time offers were handed out one by one. When it was the last person's turn, I looked up and met her eyes, which were calm with the certainty of someone who believed she had already won. Then I quietly pushed the termination letter toward her. Anna, you didn't pass. Air in the conference room seemed to freeze. The other 4 interns stood there holding their full-time offers, completely at a loss, and instinctively looked toward Anna. My assistant froze too. Standing beside me, he kept giving me urgent looks. Ms. Parker. I acted as if I had not seen him and calmly studied the girl in front of me. She looked so much like her mother. She had the same beauty, the same intelligence, and the same effortless sense of superiority, as if she had been born above everyone else. Of everyone in the room, Anna was the only one who did not panic. She only paused for a second before regaining her composure. Then she unhurriedly opened the folder she had brought with her and laid the documents flat on the table. Ms. Parker, I interned at your company for 3 months and handled 4 projects. I completed 2 of them independently, and the client renewal rate was 100%. Her tone was steady and measured, and every point was clear. I also received top marks in 2 consecutive quarterly evaluations, and my performance was the highest among all interns in my cohort. Laying everything out, she paused and looked up at me. With results like that, I ranked first among everyone in my group. If you're rejecting me, you owe me a reason. When she said it, her chin was slightly raised. There was no grievance in her eyes, only restrained composure after being insulted. That was the kind of confidence that came from never having had to fight for her place in the world. It was the confidence and pride that only came from being spoiled since childhood and growing up in a happy, protected family. I leaned back in my chair and looked at her for a long time before finally speaking. There is no reason. Anna's expression stiffened. This is my company. If I want to let you go, that's all there is to it. Last, a crack appeared in Anna's composure. Her expression changed slightly, but she quickly scoffed. Ms. Parker, this is workplace bullying. She closed her folder and her tone instantly turned cold. If I make this public, I'm afraid it will damage your company's reputation. I smiled. I'm not bullying you. I stared at her without a trace of expression on my face. If you think this is bullying, maybe that says more about you. After all, truly capable people don't assume they're being targeted. Only guilty people do. The moment I said that, Anna's face changed completely. I had finally provoked her. Just then, my assistant leaned in from the side and lowered his voice beside my ear. Ms. Parker, maybe you should reconsider. Ms. Bradford really did perform exceptionally well during her internship, and the board looked into her background. Her father is Richard Bradford of Bradford Group. Richard Bradford. I raised a hand and cut him off, then looked at Anna. He's your father, isn't he? Anna paused for a moment, then lifted her chin, as if that identity alone gave her something to be proud of. Ms. Parker has heard of my father. Her voice carried undisguised confidence. That case, you should also understand that if I stay, there may be opportunities for your company and Bradford Group to work together in the future. When she said it, her posture was composed and certain. After all, 20 years had passed. Bradford Group was a long-established company, and though it was nowhere near as powerful as it had once been, it still carried a kind of influence most companies could only envy. No need. Anna's expression froze. I don't need Bradford Group's business. I pushed the termination letter in front of her. You may leave now. Anna lost control completely. Her face flushed scarlet, not from shame, but from anger. After all, she had grown up as the family's golden girl. She had never been rejected in public before. Fine. She glared at me viciously and snatched the termination letter off the table. MS, Parker, I'll remember what happened today. I hope you won't regret it later. She left. I dismissed the other 4 interns as well. My assistant clearly still had not recovered and was still trying to talk me out of it. MS, Parker, why would you do that? Bradford Group may not be what it once was, but it still carries more weight than most companies could ever hope for. Firing the Bradford heiress in public like this isn't a wise move. Are you finished? My voice was cold, and my assistant immediately shut his mouth. Make copies of every project file from Anna's internship and send them to my office. That afternoon, my assistant had just delivered the files when my office door was shoved open from the outside. I looked up and saw a woman who had clearly spent a fortune keeping herself polished storm in on high heels. She wore a Chanel suit. The emerald bangle on her wrist gleamed so brightly it almost hurt to look at, and her makeup was so flawless that it hid every trace of her real age, Lauren Bradford. I had not seen her in 20 years, and clearly, life had treated her well. You're the owner of this company. She walked over, sat down in front of me, and casually tossed her Hermes bag onto my desk. Who gave you the nerve to fire my daughter? I ignored her. Moving slowly, I picked up the mug on my desk and poured myself a cup of coffee. Mrs. Bradford SR, you still sound as forceful as ever. It seems you've been taking excellent care of yourself all these years. Lauren froze. She stared at my face for several seconds, but she still could not remember where she had seen me before. Clearly, she had forgotten me long ago. 20 years ago, I was the only 6-year-old little girl she could have thrown out of my own home with a single sentence. Now that I was the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar tech empire, how could she possibly recognize me instead? She assumed I knew her because of her status as Mrs. Bradford SR. Since you know who I am, let's not waste time. Lauren's voice was elegant and composed, carrying the entitled arrogance of someone who had been pampered for years. Anna is my daughter. The fact that she was willing to work for your company should be an honor, but someone with her ability is wasted in an entry-level role. Put her directly into a management position. I smiled faintly. Does she deserve one? Lauren's expression changed. What did you say? I set down my cup and looked at her, saying each word clearly. I said she doesn't deserve one. Lauren shot to her feet, her face going white with rage. Parker, don't push your luck. My daughter working here is already a favor to you. Do you have any idea how many partnership deals Bradford Group handles in a year? One word from my husband, and the opportunities your company could get would be enough to set you up for life. I quietly watched her ugly display and could not help wondering. Had she worn that same face back then, when she threatened my mother into giving up her place as Mrs. Bradford SR? Sorry, but I have no interest in Bradford Group's business. I pressed the intercom on my desk. Send 2 security guards up. The guards came upstairs quickly and grabbed Lauren by the arms. Her eyes widened. She probably never imagined that, with her status, anyone would dare put hands on her. Then my office door was shoved open again. A tall, thin young man rushed in. He looked to be in his early 20s and was dressed head to toe in expensive streetwear. He pointed straight at my face and started cursing. Who do you think you are to lay hands on my mother? You think my dad can't shut this pathetic company down by tomorrow? I looked at his reckless young face and the features that were almost identical to Richard's. For a moment, another image flashed before my eyes. On that rainy night 20 years ago, I had lost 2 people at once. My mom, who loved me more than anyone, and my unborn baby brother. If that child had lived, he would have been about this age now. Is this your son? My voice carried a tremor so faint it was almost undetectable. Of course. Andrew Bradford, my son with Richard. I stared hard at the 2 of them, then smiled. Good. I stood and looked at Andrew. Go home and tell your father I'd love to see exactly what he plans to do to me. The 2 of them were soon thrown out by security. I sat back down, picked up the coffee that had gone cold, and drained it. I knew this was only the beginning. After having them removed, I gave my assistant another task. Look into Andrew. I want everything you can find. A file was delivered to me. Andrew Bradford, 21 years old, a college senior, currently interning at Channel 8, the local TV station. What a coincidence. He was working in television. I stared at the file for a long time before finally making the call. It was answered quickly. Olivia, why are you calling right now? Didn't you say you were slammed today? When I heard Nathan Cole's voice, I fell silent for a few seconds. He was my boyfriend, and he was also one of Channel 8's top producers. I did not want to drag him into this, but for this, he was the only one who could help me. "They're an intern at your station named Andrew Bradford," he answered right away. "Yes, I heard he's Bradford Group's only son. How do you know him?" I hesitated, but in the end, I asked anyway. "I don't want to see him there. Can you get him fired?" Nathan went quiet for a moment on the other end. He knew me. He knew I was not the kind of person who made unreasonable demands. "Livia, what happened?" "Nothing. I did not want him to know about my past, so I only spoke softly. I don't like the Bradfords." Nathan did not press me further. He simply answered, crisp and decisive. "'Kay, I'll handle it." I let out a breath and warmth rose in my chest. "I'll come pick you up at the station tonight." After work, I drove to Channel 8. As soon as I got out of the car, I saw Andrew being held back by 2 security guards while filthy curses kept spilling out of his mouth. Why am I being dismissed out of nowhere, just because I cursed someone out during work hours? Let me tell you, my father is Richard Bradford. Offending me means offending all of Bradford Group. A man stood nearby, trying to talk him down with a helpless look on his face. "Andrew, please calm down. You were the one who hit a coworker first. We're just following policy." "I am the policy." "I'm telling you right now, if that woman isn't let go today and made to get on camera and beg me for forgiveness, this isn't over." Just then, Nathan walked out of the building. He spotted me at once, came straight over, and naturally took my hand. "Have you been waiting long?" "No, I just got here." I smiled at him, and Andrew happened to see it. The moment he saw how close we were, he seemed to understand everything. "Parker, I knew this was your doing. Firing my sister wasn't enough, so you got someone to fire me too." He broke free from the guards, lifted his fist, and rushed toward me. Nathan's gaze turned sharp, instantly stepping in front of me and pushing Andrew hard in the torso to stop him. "Get him out of here and keep him far away from her." The 2 guards obeyed and dragged Andrew away at once. "Parker, you think you can go after the Bradfords? My father won't let you get away with this." "Just wait." Andrew's curses faded into the distance, and Nathan looked at me with concern. "Richard Bradford has been one of this city's leading businessmen for years. What happened that made you do this?" I shook my head, unwilling to say more. That night I received a call from a number that felt both unfamiliar and painfully familiar. It was Richard Bradford. 20 years had passed. But when I heard that voice again, my heart still clenched before I could stop it. "You're Ms. Parker of Keystone Technologies." On the other end of the line, his voice carried the condescending scrutiny of a man used to looking down on others. "That's me." "Gave you the nerve to go after my children?" I let out a soft scoff and answered without mercy. "Mr. Bradford SR, are you sure you understand the situation? Compared with Keystone, Bradford Group has already been left behind by the market. Why would I waste my time targeting a failed relic?" "You!" My words enraged Richard completely. He had probably never been challenged like that by someone from a younger generation in his entire life. His heavy breathing came through the phone. "Fine. Very good. You're young, arrogant, and completely unaware of your own limits. You think Keystone is so impressive? Then let's see how many days you can last. Be waiting." I said the words calmly and hung up. Richard moved quickly. Early the next morning, my assistant rushed in with his phone in hand, his expression grim. "MS. Parker, you need to see this." Number 3 on X was #Keystone Tech CEO Private Life Scandal #. I scrolled down. Several gossip blogs and clickbait accounts had posted long pieces claiming that if I had become CEO in my early 20s, I must have had a wealthy backer. Then several more posts followed, all implying that our company's core technology was unreliable and that we had conned the market through pure hype. "MS. Parker, several partners have already called to ask what's going on," my assistant said, his voice shaking. "If we don't handle this soon, they may pull out." Before I could answer, someone knocked on my office door. An assistant from PR hurried in with a laptop. "This is bad, Ms. Parker. Anna posted a video online too." I took the laptop and looked. In the video, Anna sat in front of the camera with perfect makeup, showing each project report she had completed during her internship one by one. "These are all the projects I completed during my internship at Keystone Technologies. Every one of them represents my hard work. My performance ranked first among all interns in my cohort, but Ms. Parker fired me in public without giving me any reason." She paused, and her eyes reddened just enough. I later found out that 2 of the male interns had private contact with Ms. Parker. I don't want to assume the worst, but the facts are right here. The end of the video, she included a side-by-side comparison of herself and one of the male interns. The caption read, "Where exactly did I lose? My assistant was so furious that he slapped the desk." That's complete nonsense. That male intern worked on back-end support. He didn't even have project metrics. Head of PR was so anxious that he kept wringing his hands. MS. Parker, the internet has completely turned against us. Everyone is accusing the company of workplace bullying. Should we release a statement explaining our side? I nodded. We should release a statement. I did not issue a clarification. I filed a lawsuit directly against Anna for defamation and damage to the company's reputation. My response enraged the Bradfords all over again. Before long, Richard contacted the TV station and arranged a live televised confrontation, then asked whether I had the nerve to show up. I was about to agree when Nathan hurriedly stopped me. "Olivia, don't go." Richard contacted a lot of media outlets. This time, the host and the guests have all been bought off, and they've already scripted the entire segment. The moment you show up, hit pieces will be flooding every feed. I listened quietly, then suddenly asked him one question. "Can you get control of the live feed?" He nodded instinctively. "I can, but that's enough." I sent Richard a message directly, "I'll be there." After putting down my phone, I turned and walked into the restroom, looking at myself in the mirror. The woman in the mirror wore a dark gray tailored suit and stood perfectly straight. 20 years had passed. From the day my mother died until now, I had been waiting for this broadcast. Looking at my reflection, I spoke softly. I finally lived to see this day. The broadcast was scheduled for 8 o'clock 3 nights later. When I arrived, Nathan was waiting for me at the entrance. "The studio is packed," he said in a low voice. "Richard invited more than 20 media outlets. The entire front row is filled with his people. The host is Carter, and he's worked with Bradford Group for years. Are you sure you want to go in?" "I'm already here." Nathan looked at me and said nothing more. He only squeezed my hand gently. When we entered the studio, Richard Bradford, Lauren Bradford, and Anna Bradford were seated across from me. The moment I sat down, the host aimed straight at me. "Ms. Parker, as far as we know, Ms. Bradford performed exceptionally well during her internship at Keystone Technologies. Her results were outstanding, and she even led a project that brought significant profit to the company. Yet at the final stage of the full-time conversion review, you let her go without giving any reason. Can you explain that to us?" As soon as he finished speaking, Anna's eyes reddened, and a few perfectly timed tears slipped out. I really don't know what I did wrong. I only wanted to work hard and prove my value. But during my internship, Ms. Parker made things difficult for me again and again. She even used baseless accusations to attack my character. The moment she finished, sympathetic murmurs rose from the audience. "Ms. Parker is way too overbearing. She saw a pretty young girl and decided to bully her. She's obviously jealous of Ms. Bradford for being young, talented, and accomplished. She probably slept her way to the top herself, so who does she think she is?" The host looked satisfied with the effect in the room and handed the microphone to me. "Ms. Parker, what is the truth? Or is there some inside story you can't share with the public?" Every camera turned toward me. Instinctively, I looked across the room. Richard and Lauren sat on either side of Anna, silently guarding their precious daughter. The scene was almost exactly like the day I had been driven out of the Bradford family 20 years ago. Only this time I was no longer alone. I turned my head toward the control room and gave a silent nod. The next second, the giant screen in the studio lit up. Everyone fell silent. The footage showed Keystone Technologies' office area. The timestamp read 2 o'clock in the morning. A sneaky figure appeared in the empty office. It was the same Anna sitting across from me at that very moment, crying as if she were the victim. On the screen, she unlocked my computer with practiced ease, plugged in a USB drive, and quickly copied files from it. After she finished, she carefully deleted the activity logs and left the company as if nothing had happened. The entire process had been captured clearly by a hidden camera. The studio fell into dead silence. Everyone stared at the screen with wide eyes, then turned to look at Anna, whose face had gone instantly pale. I stood up and walked onto the stage with complete composure. Then I picked up the microphone. My voice carried clearly through the entire studio and reached the tens of millions of viewers watching the live stream. "Everyone, the host just asked why I fired her. Now I'll answer that question." I pointed sharply at Anna. "Because she didn't come to my company as an intern. She came to steal. I refuse to let a corporate spy become part of my company. That is my reason." The entire studio went silent. A few seconds later, murmurs exploded through the audience. "A corporate spy." Oh my God, is this real? No wonder she was fired. I would have fired her too. That wasn't hearing an intern. That was letting a thief walk right through the front door. I knew there had to be more to this, so she was the thief playing the victim. Anna's face had gone as white as paper. Her lips trembled, and she could not get a single word out. Richard was a seasoned operator, and he was the first to regain his composure. He shot to his feet, pointed at me, and roared. Lies! That video has to be fake. You're using such a filthy trick just to destroy my daughter. Fake, I scoffed. You thought cutting power to the entire building would keep the cameras from recording. I clapped my hands, and the image on the giant screen quickly changed again. This time, detailed digital forensics reports and transfer logs appeared on the screen. Everyone, please look closely. The files on my flash drive had a tracer built into them long ago. The moment anyone tried to transfer them, the data would sync automatically. And according to the records, what Anna copied was our company's newly developed proprietary core code. Within 5 minutes of the copy, that code was uploaded in full to Bradford Group servers. Mr. Bradford SR, are you satisfied with this evidence? I looked at Richard. Cold sweat had begun to bead on his forehead, and his eyes kept darting away. Lauren could not hold back any longer. She stood and screamed. That's impossible. Our Anna would never do something like that. Bradford Group has been in business for more than 30 years. We don't need whatever code your company has. Isn't that exactly why you're so desperate to modernize? My smile sharpened. But I still have to thank Ms. Bradford. Without her, I never would have got my hands on what comes next. Everyone held their breath. The image on the screen changed again. This time, the screen no longer showed dry technical data. It played videos and audio recordings in the videos. Richard was seen inside upscale private clubs, drinking with powerful figures and quietly handing them thick envelopes of cash. In the recordings, he and several other executives could be heard plotting to embezzle funds and use violent intimidation to crush their competitors. There were also wire transfer records, off-the-books side agreements, and pieces of an entire shadow operation that could never survive daylight. Bribery. Violent intimidation. Embezzlement. I slowly walked until I stood across from Richard and looked down at him. Mr. Bradford SR, Bradford Group has been honored year after year as an outstanding company, and you have accepted award after award as a distinguished business leader. For the past 20 years, have you slept well at night? Richard slowly lifted his head, still forcing himself to look calm. 20 years had passed. The man had grown old, but even now he was still clinging to that superior, untouchable posture. Are you wondering how I got this evidence? I bent down and lowered my voice so that only he could hear me. Did you really think Anna managed to sneak into my company because she was that capable? I had my team embed a program in the code she copied. All of this evidence came straight from your own computer, Mr. Bradford SR. You sent your daughter in to destroy my company so you could buy it out afterward. I let her in because I wanted these files, and I wanted them so I could destroy your life completely. I looked at him with icy calm. Ever since Keystone began taking Bradford Group's contracts again and again, I had been waiting. The moment Anna applied for an internship at my company, I knew the prey had walked into the trap on its own. Only now did Richard finally realize it. He stared at me in terror, his lips trembling. Who the hell are you? I said nothing. No one in the studio said anything either. Richard collapsed back into his chair, his face ashen. Lauren gripped his arm so tightly that her nails dug into his suit. Anna shrank into the corner of the couch, no longer able to maintain even a trace of her elegant composure. I stood on stage, holding the microphone. My palm was damp. I had prepared for this moment for 20 years. I had thought I would be calm when it finally came, but now that I was truly standing here, my hands still began to shake. Richard Bradford. My voice came through the microphone with a faint tremor. Those were your corporate crimes, but that isn't all. Richard looked up at me in confusion. Because what you owe me goes far beyond business. I took a deep breath. You also owe me 2 lives. The studio fell completely silent. The giant screen lit up again. The first image was a photograph of a young woman in a floral dress, smiling beneath a magnolia tree. That was my mother 20 years ago. The second was a yellowed hospital record bearing the hospital's official certification seal at the bottom. The patient died after resuscitation efforts failed due to massive blood loss. The fetus was stillborn due to fetal distress. The third was a hospital staffing transfer memo. It was dated that rainy night 20 years ago and ordered the on-call obstetrics team pulled from the maternity ward to treat a woman with a headache. Only one name appeared on the approval line. Richard Bradford. The studio erupted. A mother and baby both died. He pulled OB specialists away from a woman hemorrhaging in labor to treat a headache. What kind of person does that? Richard shot to his feet so violently that his chair toppled to the floor. All color drained from his face. He pointed at me, his voice cracking. "Who are you? Who the hell are you?" Lauren's face had gone pale too. She stared at the authorization form on the screen. A few strands of her carefully styled hair had slipped loose, her lips moved soundlessly, and she stumbled one step back. I did not answer. I simply reached into the pocket of my suit and took out a piece of paper. It was old and carefully folded, its creases worn soft and its color yellowed with age. I unfolded it and held it up. It was a birth certificate. It read, child's name, Emily Bradford, mother, Laura Parker, father, Richard Bradford. Richard Bradford. I called his name, then slowly took off my glasses. Lauren stared hard at my face. She recognized me. She let out a scream and stumbled backward, pointing at me with a shrill, piercing voice. "It's you! How are you still alive?" Richard's eyes widened too. When he looked at me, there was no guilt in his eyes, only shock. "You!" My voice carried clearly through the studio and reached the tens of millions of viewers watching the live stream. "I am the child you drove out of the Bradford family 20 years ago. My mother's name was Laura Parker. She was Richard Bradford's legal wife. 20 years ago, she suffered a massive hemorrhage during labor, and Richard had every doctor pulled away from her to treat Lauren's headache. My mother and my unborn brother both died on that delivery table." I took one step forward and looked down at Richard, who had collapsed to the floor. "I came back to make you pay for my mother and my unborn brother." The entire room fell into dead silence. Then every camera flash went off at once. Richard slumped to the floor and stared up at me, his lips trembling for a long moment. Didn't you run off with some thug?" I froze for a second, then laughed out loud. "I ran off with some thug. Is that what Lauren told you?" Richard whipped his head toward Lauren. Lauren's face was frighteningly pale, and her eyes kept darting away. "Didn't you tell me she got into trouble at boarding school, started running around with some lowlife from outside campus, got pregnant and ran off with him?" Richard's voice was shaking. "So you believed whatever she told you?" My voice was cold. "Why don't you ask your wonderful wife where she really sent me back then?" Lauren shot to her feet and pointed at me, shrieking. "You're lying. Your father sent you to boarding school, and you were the one who had no shame." I pressed the remote. The giant screen lit up. It showed a letter written by Lauren to the director of Sunrise Children's Home. The letter read, "Keep Emily Bradford under control. You don't have to be gentle with her. Don't let her outside. Don't feed her properly. Beat her if you have to, lock her up if you have to, and just keep her alive. I'll send the payment on time every year. Don't let her escape." The date was the third day after I had been thrown out of the Bradford family. The studio went silent for one instant, then erupted. "Don't feed her properly. Beat her if you have to. What kind of monster writes that? 20 years ago, she was only 6. Lauren's body kept shaking and the muscles in her face twitched. "I didn't write that letter. You forged it. Forged it. The handwriting is yours, the bank transfers are yours, and the children's home has had that letter in its files for 20 years. I stared at her. "Lauren, you thought I would die in there, but not only did I survive, I escaped." Richard pushed himself up from the floor, his eyes bloodshot as he glared at Lauren. "You told me she was at boarding school, but behind my back you did this." Then he turned to me, his face full of sudden tenderness. "Emily, I did look for you. When you were 16, I said I wanted to bring you home. Did you actually look?" I cut him off. Richard opened his mouth, but the words stuck in his throat. After a long moment, he forced out a sentence. "It was Lauren." "Lauren said you had run off with some thug, and I was so angry I smiled. So you still believed whatever she told you?" I looked into his eyes. Just like back then when she said I was bullying Anna, you threw me out of the house without even thinking. I was 6 years old." Richard's face turned ashen. He spun around and slapped Lauren hard across the face. "This is all your fault. All of it, you bitch." The slap sent Lauren crashing into the arm of the couch. She clutched her face and froze for a second before lunging at him, her nails raking toward his face. "Stop pretending you're some loving father. Richard, every time you saw her, didn't she remind you of your dead first wife? You wanted her gone forever too. And now you're blaming me." The two of them started fighting. Anna screamed and rushed forward to pull them apart, only for Lauren's elbow to hit her in the chin. She fell back onto the couch, crying. Camera flashes went wild. The studio doors opened. Uniformed officers walked in. The one in front stepped up to Richard and showed his badge. Richard Bradford, you're under arrest on multiple charges, including bribery, embezzlement, and using violence in illegal property seizures. Another officer walked up to Lauren. Lauren Bradford, you're under arrest for unlawful confinement of a minor and child abandonment. Come with us. Lauren's body went limp, and she collapsed to the floor. Anna threw herself over her, sobbing. What gives you the right to arrest my mom? No one answered her. Richard was hauled up and dragged toward the door. Halfway there, he turned back to look at me, his eyes red. Emily, I did care about you. You're my daughter, after all. I turned my back on him. Nathan ran out of the control room and draped his jacket over my shoulders. I pulled the jacket tighter around me and walked out of the studio without looking back. The Bradford family fell. Overnight, everyone who had once lived off their power scattered. The influential friends, media allies, and business partners who used to crowd around them all kept as far away as they could. Every member of the Bradford family was taken in for questioning. A family that had once stood at the height of power vanished just like that. Everyone said I had won. They said my victory was clean, decisive, and complete. But only I knew what was left after the fire of hatred burned out. Cold ash. I returned alone to my empty house, the glittering, ice-cold fortress I had built so carefully for revenge. I let every mask and every bit of forced strength fall away, then sank heavily onto the soft couch. The burden I had carried for 20 years was finally gone, but I felt no relief at all. Only endless exhaustion and emptiness swallowed me whole. I curled up on the couch, buried my face deep against my knees, and finally could not stop the tears from falling. Mom, I avenged you. But I'm so tired. I miss you so much. I did not know how long had passed before I heard the faint sound of the lock turning. Nathan opened the door with his spare key. He did not turn on the light. By the faint glow coming in through the window, he walked to me step by step and silently wrapped his arms around me from behind. His embrace was warm and strong, like a safety net gently catching all my weakness and shame. My body stiffened. I shoved him away and wiped the tears from my face in a panic, my voice cold and distant. You saw everything. This is who I am. I'm full of hatred. For revenge, I can use any means necessary. I can even use everyone around me, including you. I did not dare look into his eyes. I was afraid I would see disappointment and fear there. Let's break up, Nathan. You deserve someone better, not someone like me, someone who would do anything for revenge. Nathan said nothing. He only pulled me back into his arms and held me even tighter, so tightly I could barely breathe. He cupped my face and forced me to look at him. In the darkness, I could not clearly see his expression, but I could sense the heat of tears in his eyes. You idiot! His voice was terribly hoarse. The only thing I hate is that I didn't find you sooner, before you had to suffer through all of this alone. My tears broke loose again. You are not darkness. You are not a villain. He gently wiped the tears from my face with his thumb and said every word with absolute clarity. You are the kind of light that fought its way out of the dark and kept moving toward dawn. Olivia, let me take care of you, okay? Marry me. Let me give you a home. Home was the word I had longed for over the past 20 years, and he had said it so easily. I could not hold myself together anymore. I broke down in his arms, crying like a child who had been lost for 20 years and had finally found the road home. That night, Nathan took me back to his house. His parents were both kind university professors. They had learned about what had happened to me from the news, and there was no disgust, no awkwardness, only aching sympathy. Nathan's mother held my hand with red-rimmed eyes. Sweetheart, from now on, this is your home. I looked at the warm smiles of his family and felt a kind of warmth I had not known in so long, the warmth of a real family. At last, I truly smiled. Later, I brought Nathan to see Aunt Helen. She had been my mother's closest friend, and she was my godmother, the woman who had raised me all these years. Aunt Helen looked at Nathan, tall, handsome, and so attentive to me, and she was so pleased she could not stop smiling. She held my hand, and her eyes slowly reddened. Emily. If your mother can see you now, she can finally rest easy knowing you're happy. Yes, Mom. I finally have a home of my own. Later, while Richard was in prison, he sent word through intermediaries more than once, asking to see me. He said he knew he was wrong, that he regretted everything, and that he wanted to claim me as his daughter again and make it up to me. He said it was all Lauren's fault, that he had let that vicious woman blind him. He wanted me to spare him for the sake of the father-daughter bond between us. I never went to see him, not until his lawyer brought me a single message from him. I failed your mother. Only then did I finally go to see him in prison. Through the cold glass, I looked at the man who seemed to have aged 20 years overnight, the man who was my biological father. He wore a prison jumpsuit. His hair had gone gray, and his face was covered in regret and despair. Emily, I was wrong. I'm sorry to you, and I'm sorry to your mother. He broke down sobbing and repeated it again and again. I said nothing. I only looked at him calmly. When his sobbing finally ran out, I took a document from my bag and placed it beside the prison phone in front of him. It was a paternity test report. Didn't you always dote on your precious son, Andrew Bradford? My voice was perfectly calm. Take a look at this. Consider it the last surprise I'll ever give you. Richard picked up the report with trembling hands. When he reached the final section and saw the conclusion excluding him as Andrew's biological father, his eyes bulged in disbelief. It was as if every ounce of strength had been drained out of him. He collapsed into the chair and let out a desperate, animal-like howl. No, that's impossible, that's impossible. I watched him fall apart, but I felt nothing stir inside me. There was no thrill of revenge either, only a quiet sense of release. Andrew was Lauren's son with the man she had been sleeping with behind Richard's back. Richard had abandoned his wife and daughter, and all he had gotten in return was a 20-year lie and a 20-year betrayal. Maybe that was the best punishment he could have received. I stood up, looked at him one last time, and turned to leave. From that day on, there would be nothing left between us. On a clear, breezy weekend, I brought Nathan and Aunt Helen to my mother's grave. The headstone had been wiped spotless, and in the photo on it, my mother's smile was gentle and peaceful. I placed a bouquet of white daisies gently in front of her grave. Mom! I knelt in front of the headstone and pressed my cheek against the cold stone as if that could bring me a little closer to her. I avenged you. The people who hurt you all got the punishment they deserved. I also found someone who loves me very, very much. His name is Nathan Cole. He's your son-in-law. Aunt Helen is doing well, too. We're all doing well. Wherever you are, you can finally rest easy. Nathan knelt beside me and gently wrapped his arms around me. Aunt Helen stood behind us, looking at the photo on the headstone with a soft, relieved smile. Sunlight filtered through the leaves and fell over us in warm, scattered patches. I leaned against Nathan's shoulder and felt the warmth of a home that had come 20 years late. The fire of revenge that had burned inside me for 20 years finally went out completely, and love and a new beginning were quietly taking root in my life. The road ahead was still long, but this time I would not walk it alone. The end. This is Listening Novel. We appreciate you spending your time with us. If you enjoyed today's story, please like and subscribe for more stories, and stay tuned for what's next.